Tonight, John Mahama desperate to unite a fractured NDC after bitterly contested presidential and parliamentary primaries.
We must flip the coin from competition to cooperation. Incumbent members of parliament who lost their primaries that I intend to meet with these MPs at the earliest possible opportunity.
We have details from his acceptance speech in Tamale, where he vowed that the next NDC government will probe the Frimpong Boateng accusations in that explosive Galamsey report.
It also emerged that the heart surgeon had 2 years ago boldly exposed the duplicity of the MPP government in the fight against Galamsey. We shall pursue this matter further and make sure that justice is done.
Story is always brought to you by Vodafone. It was a bitterly contested parliamentary and presidential primaries for the main opposition NDC. The outcome has left the NDC fractured, with some, including former Minority Chief Whip Muntaka Mubarak, calling out some party executives, accusing them of conspiring to remove many incumbent NDC MPs in the parliamentary primaries.
These are colleagues who have gone for election. If we were to call people and allow them to speak, those who have lost, those some who have won, and they are to tell you how people have put their nose into their constituencies, you will be shocked how people have decided to put their fingers across the constituencies. This was something that as Chief Whip, I will never agree. If I would hear any person doing that, I would have insisted that the person be brought to book. Look at the numbers that we've lost. I'm hearing 17, 16. Yes. Whichever it is, that is too large a number. Because in 2009 and 2000, prior to the 2020 election, we were only 109 in the chamber. With the leader Haruna, we worked so hard to make sure that minimum loss was achieved. Only 9 people lost. If you slice it even by percentages, you see that that was a smaller percentage than the loss today. I'm not going to call names. Regardless of the head, I'm not going to stand in the public to wish NDC bad or to say that NDC should break or to aggravate the confusion. I'm only drawing attention that, look, we have a lot of work to do, especially our council authority.
Well, in the last couple of hours, flag bearer of the NDC, who was just elected over the weekend, John Mahama, has been delivering an extensive acceptance speech from the capital of the northern region. And he says he is desperate to unite the fractured party.
From today, right here in the hall of the University of Development Studies, I declare that the internal competition for the flag bearership position is over. You have chosen experience with vision over experiment, and I'm confident that in December 2024, Ghanaians will make that choice that puts us back on the path of building the Ghana we want together. We must flip the coin from competition to cooperation. We need cooperation to build a better Ghana and a better NDC. I'm therefore calling for cooperation among all elected parliamentary candidates and your aspirants and supporters. Incumbent members of parliament who lost their primaries must also keep their heads up. You remain heroes for the good job you have done and continue to do. We need your experience and talents for the honors job that faces us when the good people of Ghana give us a mandate to steer the affairs of this country once more. Above all, we need you in the remaining 1.5 years of your parliamentary mandate to carry out your duties in Parliament with dedication and commitment to safeguard the interests of the Ghanaian people. And I wish to assure you that I intend to meet with these MPs at the earliest possible opportunity.
So that is what he plans to do at the parliamentary level, where the contest, as we know, producing 17 casualties, incumbent NDC MPs who have lost in their primaries with no opportunity to stand in the general elections next year. But he also had his own challenges with the presidential primary, where we know a bitterly contested presidential primary led to a court suit that then eventually led to withdrawal from that race by the Dr. Kwabena Dufo. So what is his plan for Dr. Kwabena Dufo going forward? Will he reach out? This is what he said about Dr. Kwabena Dufo and Kojo Bonsu, both gentlemen contesting him in the primary.
Let me, on your behalf and on my own behalf, acknowledge the contribution of Dr. Kwabena Dufo former Mayor of Kumasi, Kojo Bonsu, and Mr. Ernest Kobia for what they have done towards enhancing the internal democratic systems of our party.
Well, we'll interrogate that a bit more because he has committed to meet the incumbent MPP, NDC NPs who lost their seat, but he didn't indicate what he plans to do in trying to bring Dr. Konadufo and co back into the fold following that bitter contest. We'll get some clarity from his team shortly on that. But he reserved a sizable chunk of the time today in taking on the government, the governing New Patriotic Party, and President Akufo-Addo. He says the NPP government must prepare to hand over after the 2024 elections.
Clearly, the Akufo-Addo and Bawumia NPP administration has failed to meet the expectations of the Ghanaian people, and they must prepare to bow out at the next election. And they must start preparing their handing over notes. And get ready to account to the people of Ghana for their stewardship. Yes, there is hope for our country. I firmly believe in our collective ability as a party to lead a transformation agenda that restores decent values, revives youthful aspirations and ambitions. Ours will be a progressive government that provides equal opportunities for decent and sustainable livelihoods. I'm convinced that by working together with Ghanaians, we shall turn Ghana's hopelessness and gloom today into a better and brighter tomorrow. And we cannot allow them to continue holding Ghana's progress in reverse gear. Ghana is not for a few people alone. Ghana is for all of us and generations yet unborn. As I said, we must rise like the phoenix, rising from the ashes, renew, reform, and liberate ourselves from this misrule on December 7th, 2024. And this is why I'm running for president in 2024.
Well, he also attacked the government's record on dealing with corruption.
The truth is that this government cannot just wish away the reality that Ghana is not looking good on the Corruption Perception Index of Transparency International. The president no longer makes corruption a pet topic in any of his speeches because corruption has defeated him hands down. And let me assure you, as I stated in Garu in the Upper East during my campaign tour, that I will adopt a robust root and branch approach to fighting corruption. Because corruption is a major source through which state resources are lost. It will not matter whether the people involved in the corruption are our own people or from some other party. We will continue the constitution review process commenced by President John Evans Atta Mills of blessed memory, and we will carry it to its logical conclusion.
He also wants a mid-year budget review presented shortly after Ghana receives the IMF Executive Board approval. A budget review document, he says, must reflect the current economic reality.
Even as we await the board of the International Monetary Fund's approval for Ghana's requested bailout by the end of May or June this year, we expect that the finance minister will urgently present a mid-year review budget to Parliament, which would include any agreements they might have reached with the fund, and also one that critically cuts down government expenditure. The 2023 budget and financial statement presented to Parliament last November currently is riding on stilts with no stability. And this is why I insist government must immediately, upon approval of Ghana's program by the fund, review the 2023 budget to reflect the realities of our economic situation today.
He also promised sweeping reforms at the Bank of Ghana.
I will keep these promises when I assume office on January 7th, 2025, God willing. We will restore stability and inclusive growth in the economy, and we shall rejuvenate the almost collapsed banks and the financial sector. And this will involve sweeping reforms at the Bank of Ghana because the central bank itself has been a part of creating this problem. I'll create the foundation that will ensure that Ghana will never suffer such a deadly debt management program that threatens to send our elderly people holding government bonds to an early grave and wipe out the investments of the Ghanaian middle class.
On that controversial report by the former Environment Minister, Professor Frimpong Boateng, he says his government, if he is elected and forms the next government, will pursue a thorough investigation into that and bring justice to those accused.
In fact, some Ghanaians in the diaspora have proven to be extremely beneficial to our country. Take, for instance, Professor Frimpong Boateng of the Cardiothoracic Center, fame, who returned from Germany to establish the Cardio Center and has saved many Ghanaian lives. Since the professor's return, he has contributed his significant bit in medicine and in politics. And only recently, an Al Jazeera documentary accusing President Akufo-Addo and his government of organized crime in collusion with a foreigner, it also emerged that the heart surgeon had 2 years ago boldly exposed the duplicity of the MPP government in the fight against Galamsey. His report has opened a can of worms, which I know this president, in his usual manner, will sweep under the carpet, just as many corruption scandals have been cleared by who is called the clearing agent. We shall pursue this matter further and make sure that justice is done.
He also promised that his ministers, if he's elected and forms the next government, will be required to sign an undertaking committing to waive their ex gratia.
Our nation is still at the crossroads with crippling debts and an inefficient and wasteful government. We cannot continue this pathway. It is a betrayal of our people as a leader to keep doing things the same way when the results leave them poorer. I am committed to operating an effective government with no more than 60 ministers. These ministers, together with other appointees of the government, will not be entitled to ex gratia payments after their tenure, as I will make them commit to that undertaking even before the necessary constitutional amendments, including a review of the controversial Article 71, is carried out.
I want to bring in an aide to the former President John Dramani Mahama, who's just been elected flag bearer of the NDC. He himself won in his own parliamentary primary in Asebu Kwamankase constituency here in the central region. Felix Kwachifosu, thanks for your time here on Top Story, and congratulations are in order.
Well, thank you very much.
Also joining us right now is the communications director for the governing New Patriotic Party, Mr. Richard Hiagba. Thanks for your time here on Top Story.
Thank you, Evans.
Felix, let's start with your contest, the primaries. And we had the former president say that his first order of business is to meet the MPs who lost. He recognizes that that poses a challenge in trying to get them on board this campaign for 2024. For you yourselves, knowing how, keenly contested this was, how important is it that he does this and he does this immediately?
Well, it is extremely important because a loss in a contest such as this can be devastating for some people. And so it can breed apathy and lethargy. And given the tightrope we walk in Parliament, because of the closeness of the numbers, we can ill afford as a party to have apathy and lethargy bred within our ranks. So it is important that all sitting MPs who lost are quickly reached out to, engaged, assured of their continued prominence and role in the NDC and the future government, so that they will have the requisite motivation to see out the remainder of their time, of their tenure, in a manner that helps to advance the cause of the party and Ghana in Parliament as a whole. So this is extremely important. It will not be the first time it will be done. It has always been done any time that we've had parliamentary primaries and had casualties resulting out of it. So it will be nothing new, but it remains very important nonetheless.
So he'll do that for the parliamentary, incumbent MPs who lost. What about Dr. Kwabena Dufour, especially him, but also Kojo Bonsu? Yes, he mentions their name and thanks them for the contest, but we didn't hear the same, extending of an olive branch, meeting them to try and get them to come into the fold. Is there a plan for this?
It is part of the electioneering calendar of the NDC. Every time that we've had presidential primaries, time has been spent to, as it were, bridge the gaps that may have emerged in the course of the contest. You recall that in 2019, when 5 or so other people contested him, immediately after the race, some reconciliation meetings were held. And I have no doubt that similar ones will be held to patch up whatever differences may have arisen in the course of this particular contest. So I don't think that it is anything to worry about.
And it took advantage of this acceptance speech to delve into major national issues, taking on the incumbent administration, calling them out for the current economic crisis, etc. One of the things he said in there is that they are responsible for the crisis, but also they've mismanaged the economy to the point where individuals are losing their investments, and then says that when he comes in, he's going to pursue swift reforms at the Bank of Ghana. He's going to put in place a debt ceiling. Bold claims indeed, but keeping them honest. He also supervised, a similar economic crisis, not as deep as this, you must admit, but he also had his own challenges. Some say, well, he possibly hasn't got the moral authority to be towing this line now.
I'm not sure who has the right to confer moral authority on anybody, certainly not the MPP. The point is that the MPP has been poor, full stop. And they do not only need to be called out and taken on, they need to be taken out at the earliest opportunity in December 2024. What they have done requires that they are thrown out of government. They simply have no business continuing. And I do not see any reasonable individual in Ghana today, perhaps apart from the ranks of their rabid followers, who would countenance their continued stay in government after the expiration of their current mandate. So when President Mahama calls for them to be booted out, he is reflecting the concerns of an overwhelming majority of Ghanaians who are simply tired of this government, the crass mismanagement, the hopelessness, the incompetence, the deliberate destruction of our economy, and their total inability to even resolve the crisis. Look at how we've struggled to secure board approval for an IMF program. Because of the size of our debts, our creditors didn't want to have anything to do with us. It is only in the last couple of days that some respite has filtered in by way of the G20 and China agreements. So it is obvious that the rot and decline must end at some point. And if it is going to end, it must start with throwing out the MPP at the polls. Once that is done, the time will come for reconstruction. And it is the plan that President Mahama has that he outlined in the speech today. Reforms are definitely needed because any society that does not learn from painful episodes like this one is not a society that is going to go anywhere. So if it is reckless borrowing and deliberate economic mismanagement by the Akufo-Addo Bawumia government that has led us here, it only makes sense that we reverse course and move away from those things that have contributed to the mess that we find ourselves in. So the first order of business will be to restore stability and ensure that we do not trod the same path that has led us here. For instance, the Bank of Ghana has been exceptionally reckless. One would have thought that of all the agencies of state responsible for managing the economy, they will be the ones that exercise the greatest caution. But they are neck deep in the conspiracy to ravage and destroy our economy. And so you find that they routinely violate their own enabling act, which requires them not to lend money to government beyond a certain threshold. But they've gone over and above it and have deepened the debt crisis that has brought us here. Look at the extent of borrowing that has gone on. Look at how all the important macroeconomic indices have gone south. And in its wake, brought untold, unprecedented hardships on the people of Ghana. So no government that governs this way deserves to be given an opportunity to extend his mandate. Indeed, even if there was no, party contesting the MPP, they must still lose because they simply have shown that they don't have what it takes to manage this country.
Stay with me, Felix. Let me bring in Richard here. But Richard, you accept that the economy, obviously where we are today, with now seeking an IMF bailout, it's in itself, the best evidence you can find that your government has been poor in managing the economy. John Mahama says you should be preparing to hand over. Hello, Richard. Hello, Mr. Ahiagba.
Evans, can you hear me?
I can now, yes.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Let me, first of all, congratulate Felix for his success. I wish him well. But I immediately want to disagree with him.
There's a radio, I think.
Can you hear me well?
There's a radio that's giving me feedback. If you can put it off.
No, there's no radio here with me. I'm in the wilderness somewhere. So might be okay. Is it okay now?
It is, yes. Please proceed.
Okay. Yeah. So I was just saying that I want to sharply disagree with Felix, and I haven't listened to the former president. He just literally repeated most of the things that the former president repeated. I think that the NDC is taking Ghanaians as though that we have very short memory. They've said that, and they're acting it. And I don't think that we'll let them do that. Everything Felix talked about here, I can go in one by one, and try to check him on it. They're talking about recklessness, that this economy has been vanquished. They're talking about Ghana needing MPP to hand over because they are ready to take over and fix this economy. None of that can be true. We saw their record. And most importantly is His Excellency the former president, who is their leader. And so the record of his governance in this country exists. So nobody, Felix, no Ghanaian can hang their hat on anything the NDC says or anything they said in the past through this election up until now and what they will be saying part of this campaign. The only thing that will make a difference, if they say, is a recognition of how they bastardized our economy before, how they vanquished the gains they inherited from a high 14% GDP in 2011 all the way to 3.4 when they left office. I am saying to them
but you're doing even lower. You are doing even lower than 3% currently.
Sorry? You
talk about GDP. You're doing lower than 3% currently.
Yes, but Felix, Evans, what necessitated that? There's a reason for that. There's a reasonable explanation for that, which does not exist for them if they try to explain. And you saw, since you brought this point, let's go and look at the trajectory of this economy from 2017 when this government took over up until 2019 and 2020 where the interruption came. So that record exists. And I think that we shouldn't always forget it because everything they are saying, they are looking in the past to make a point. And we're going to go there and make the point. I hope that the media will not create this environment and say you are equalizing and you are talking about yesterday, we are talking about now. We're talking about records and we have to be able to look and compare. So, yes, we are not doing well now. The reasons we have explained. And that is not only Ghana that is not doing well. This afternoon, I was having a chat with a friend in London that sent me some conversations and later on some letters and notes that he was taking in a meeting, suggesting that doctors in UK are having to make a decision on whether or not to demonstrate overpay. It's unprecedented. You almost never heard anything like that. Inflation across the world is very high. Yes, they are busy talking about how high inflation is in Ghana, but that is not isolated. It's interlinked with the global realities that we're going through. So if you take MPP's governance of this country in good time, which I'll tell you is perhaps from 2017, where you have normal environmental or economic system disturbances or maybe nudges in the system, where you have supposed normal time of economic management vis-a-vis the NDC, you realize that the MPP surpasses the performance of the NDC. What you are talking about, what the NDC is leveraging and trying to make all Ghanaians think that this is a normal time, is an exceptional conversation that I think that I've been saying this for a long time, Evans, that the media must help manage this conversation, moderate this conversation in ways that we can see where the facts are, so that when an NDC person and the person of Felix or the former president talks about the mismanagement of this government, you ask them, relative to what time? Because you cannot continue to disagree that the exceptional situations that we're in across the world, where economies are struggling, that have never experienced that situation. In fact, 2 days ago, I was listening to a Congress hearing where an individual was asked to explain how they could watch for certain, rots to occur because they were put in charge of a situation to try to fix it, and all they can tell you was that yes, in fact, we have an exceptional circumstance. We couldn't do anything about it, and the reality is that what we did was actually the best we could have done under the circumstance. So yes, they are talking very high and hard, but all of that, when we break it down and try to lay the facts bare and put our records side by side, there isn't any way that the NDC can tell me. In fact, Felix talks about the banking sector, that the Bank of Ghana has been very reckless. With respect, I want to tell Felix that, look, it is rather under you that the Bank of Ghana can be said to have been reckless, to the extent that created a banking sector challenge that needed fixing. And this government taking the bull by the horn, spending in excess of 25 billion or so to rectify the enablement and the enabling environment the NDC had created for bad actors in the banking sector to abuse.
Yeah, I mean, but Richard, you make that point, but right now, all the indicators and the assessments of the banks that you claim you have cleaned up and made stronger show that majority of the banks in Ghana right now on the brink of insolvency. The Bank of Ghana itself had cause to complain about that, and have set up a financial stability fund for that purpose. Stay with me. Let me quickly get Felix. Felix, this is a challenge that John Mahama will always have to deal with. First time in our history, we have a one-term president who is seeking to come back. He will always have to deal with the question. He had 4 years. All the things he's promising now, why didn't he do them then when he had the 4 years? Hello, Felix.
Yes, often. We are even on this debate. How is it that anybody can claim that what the MPP is doing now is better than what President Mahama did in power? President Mahama is better than all the people in the MPP government put together. The records show that this government has been utterly useless. They have destroyed our economy with mismanagement and are seeking to hide behind supposed global events. But you need to ask Richard immediately to show you any country with a sort of disastrous outcome that we have. Why? Is it only Ghana that was afflicted by the COVID pandemic? So how come our West African neighbors do not have the economy in the sort of status that we have? The truth is that this government has been useless. What they have done is to squander resources given to them. They have had more money than all other governments before them put together. And yet they have managed to bankrupt our country. Evans, under the NDC, did you hear of a domestic debt exchange program? Did you hear that we are defaulted on our debts? Did we have the sort of catastrophic economic environment we have today? So what is Richard talking about? You see, they must credit the people of Ghana with a bit of intelligence. There is no human being on this earth that can ever sustain a claim that this government has been better than the NPP. And if when they speak, they claim that between 2017 and 2019, things were kosher. So between 2019 and now, who has been in charge? My grandmother's pet. They have been in charge. They have taken the decisions that have sunk us. In any event, who tells him that in 2011, we in the NDC took over from a different government? It was the NDC that was in power in 2011 when we recorded the highest growth rate in Ghana. The MPP has done nothing close to that. The highest growth they've had is 8%. And 8% is certainly not better than 14%. So if one party does 14% the government, as far as the growth rate is concerned, and you do 8%, how do you even begin to compare yourself to that government and claim that you've been better? What kind of better is that? Why does Richard think that we are all dollars and that we cannot reason for ourselves? And that when we see black, we must say it is white. You see, it is a sort of, bubble that they have cocooned themselves in, that makes them refuse to accept the reality that their government has been poor. And it is the same sort of denial that will get them thrown out of government in December 2024. Because no Ghanaian ever living anywhere on this earth can ever accept that what they've done in the last 7 years is acceptable. They have had more opportunities than any other government before them. Yet they have succeeded in destroying our economy with recklessness. Please, whose decision was it to borrow to the extent that they have done? When they were in opposition, was it not Alhaji Bawumia who was going around this country accusing the previous government of borrowing? When we had a total public debt of 120 billion, today we are in excess of 600 billion. And yet Richard wants us to believe that this situation is better than what we had in the past. Richard wants us to believe that hyperinflation, which hovered a few months around 54%, is better than the 50% they inherited. Richard wants us to believe that an exchange rate which reached 17 Ghana cedis to $1 only a couple of months ago is better than the 4 cedis at which we left it. What kind of analysis is that?
And Richard, those indicators Felix mentions, they will be the basis for a campaign next year. And of course, you are getting now the IMF Executive Board approval. Do I get a sense that the government is banking that after this approval, these indicators will show an uptick and that could become a basis for a campaign going into the 2024 elections?
Evans, thank you very much. I just want to make a note of everything Felix said. Felix didn't have to be angry. The pretense is obvious, but you asked him a basic question. He didn't answer your question. He went on a tirade just accusing and blaming MPP. The simple question you asked him was that, why is it that the former president couldn't do all the things he's promising when he was in government? It's a simple question. Phyllis should answer that question. Why didn't he answer that question? He cannot answer that question. And if he cannot answer that question, it tells you clearly that everything they are saying now cannot be believed. That's why I say nobody can hang their hat on anything they are saying or will be saying in this campaign. And we're going to make sure Ghanaians get the fact. We are quite able and capable to have the conversation is ranting about that we have mismanaged the economy. Look, he asked the question about why is it, I should point him a country that is also suffering in the situation we're in. I don't have to show him any country. He needs to look. He needs to search for it. How many countries are with the IMF now currently seeking balance of payment support? But I should ask him, Felix, when they went to IMF in 2015, how many of our neighbors went with them? When NDC and the former President Mahama went to the IMF, how many countries went to the IMF at the same time, and how many economies were caving in when they went? So please, Felix, if you want to have this conversation, you have to be sober for us to have it.
Thank you very much, Richard Ihagba. Thank you, Felix, also. It appears the conversation around the campaigns have already started in earnest, and we're here to try and moderate that for you. You have a view on this? Send me a WhatsApp, 05511111997. Thank you, gentlemen. Newsnight starts now.